6.4 presentation on providing feedback on performance and then to prescribe future actions. To start, although feedback is an essential part of improving sporting performance, there are some things you need to consider before giving feedback, and this can change from player to player depending on their mindset and stability. One thing that needs consideration is confidentiality. If the player tells you something in confidence, unless you feel there is an issue with safety, you must keep it to yourself as a coach, but also if you are giving them feedback, which may be of a sensitive manner, that should also stay between you and the player unless it's necessary to protect them by telling someone who can sort the issue out. It's also essential that you deal with all situations in a sensitive and tactful way. This is known as diplomacy. This is important as it can help maintain relationships between you and your players so that they don't feel attacked or singled out, but like you are actually looking out for them. But also it protects you as a coach, not just the players, as if you deal with things like this, it's seen as more professional, therefore avoiding complaints or criticism of your role. Also, to ensure your feedback is of a good quality, clarity is essential, whether it's verbal or written. When you have given feedback verbally, for example, afterwards, then ask a player to explain what you have said back to you, because then it will become clear if they have understood it or not, depending on the detail and quality of what they are saying. But also, if you've given something written, then go through it with them and do the same again. Because if you just say, for example, is that okay? Or do you understand? Some people may feel embarrassed about not understanding and they're likely to just say yes, even if they do not, which means their performance won't improve because they cannot fully comprehend the feedback you have given them. Another factor to consider is whether feedback is positive or negative. It always needs to be constructive, meaning it is something that will benefit the performer and is not just a straight up negative criticism which may damage their confidence. If the player sees the feedback as helpful, they are more likely to engage with it and work towards the improvements needed or keep up with the things they are good at. Then finally, you need to consider other factors which may affect performance before you give negative criticism, even if it's constructive. For example, they could have eaten the wrong thing before a game or too soon before a game. So you should instill in your team, for example, the sorts of foods they should be eating before games and how much fluid they should be consumed and how far before, and not straight away assume that their skills are the issue. It may have just been a bad performance because of this. As I touched on earlier, if someone has confidence issues, if something has gone wrong before the game or during, or even issues such as family watching, which might put other people off. There are underlying confidence issues. You need to take into account all possibilities that might be affecting this and not just assume their performance is poor because they are a poor player. So now we're just going to look at the overall analysis of our notational analysis. So overall, the main thing I noticed from my notational analysis result was that my weaker player was not a very defensive player. So you can see from the first chart, which is defensive rebounds, he made none compared to his counterpart who made 4, which is quite a significant difference. We also didn't manage to score any 2-point shots or layups, which I inferred to either mean he has poor accuracy or doesn't get the opportunity to shoot because he doesn't get near enough to the net. The next chart kind of backs me up on this last point, as he managed to score 3-point shots, which would be considered harder points to score, but they're taken further away from the net. So it may be as a player he chooses to stay away from the net to be more of an attacking player on the opposition. His number of passes compared to his counterpart were also not very different. He made 9 and the other player made 10, which suggests he's still an active player, just maybe chooses to prioritise certain things over others due to maybe knowing his own strengths and weaknesses, which for his position maybe isn't a good thing because he should be more of an all-round player. The schematics and distance covered also back up the last point, as he covered more distance than Josh. He covered 1,500 metres and Josh only covered 1,300 metres. So therefore he is being active in the game, even though it's only 200 metres more, but in terms of movement, but maybe not as active in terms of shooting or defending. Okay, so now we're going to look at 6.2 on our technical model review. And what I found for 6.2 was the preparation stage was not done very well in his case. He started facing out the whole time and wasn't facing his player to begin with, which is the main part of the stage, to not have your back to the player you're marking. He seemed overly focused on where the ball was going and not the player. However, he did start with his arm across his chest, so he did at least have contact to know where he was, which kind of gave up for the fact that he didn't look at the player. But also his stance could probably have been slightly lower, but overall he did stay quite wide and low to the ground. The execution stage was much better. Once the ball was thrown, he straight away turned around, completely to block the player, It's a wide and low stance, watching where the ball was going the whole time. He possibly could have stayed closer to the player and kept contact for longer, but other than that, it was performed pretty well. And finally, for the recovery stage, he did sprint forwards, but not with a lot of power, and he stayed low to the ground and waited for the ball to fall into his hands rather than taking a two-footed jump up to receive the ball straight away. What he did well also was that once he received the ball, he moved into a more open space to be further away from the player, who would now be marking him, and turned around with the ball tucked into his side to make it harder for another player to knock it out of his hands. Now, look at the analysis for our 6.3 numerical model. Overall, what their numerical model showed is that they lack the components to perform a good vertical jump, which could be linked in with the fact that he did not jump up to receive the ball in the box out and rebound, as he knew he wouldn't get up high enough to receive it whilst it was still in the air. This is the area that needs the most work. His level of power was very low. It was 644.11 watts compared to the group mean, which was 1,253 watts. This is quite a significantly low result. Without power, all the other elements of a vertical jump will be lower. His impulse was also low at 141 compared to the mean of 201.77. In turn, that meant his duration of phase and net resultant force were lower, and as multiplied they make impulse. His duration of phase was 504, which is still below the group mean, but higher than his counterpart in this case, whose duration of phase was 0.406. So it may just suggest that they were a lighter performer, so were able to get off the ground for longer, or took longer in the preparation phase. And finally, his resultant force was only 279 compared to the mean of 431 newtons. In this case, his counterpart's results were significantly higher at 680 newtons. Due to the lack of power as well, this led to low acceleration and velocity. His acceleration was 4.85 compared to the mean of 5.89 meters per second. And again, his counterpart in this case was way above the mean at 8.5 meters per second. His velocity was 2.3 meters a second compared to the mean of 3 meters a second. So therefore, as all his results were low, his overall jump height would also be low, as it was only 0.2 meters compared to the mean of 0.32 meters. So now we'll talk about some strategies. This first strategy links to 6.1, and what I will get him to do is shooting drills and defensive drills. His main issues were that he wasn't scoring or attempting to score that much, also wasn't moving into defensive play. So therefore, he should incorporate shooting drills and more defensive drills into his training. There are many different drills he could use, but I'm going to choose one drill and also choose one I feel is most adaptable to be able to make them harder or incorporate new elements. So for this shooting drill, it's a simple shooter rebound, who's effectively the defence, and feeder drill. The shooter, in this case, the player I am analysing, should start at the top of the shooting line just above the key. The rebounder should stand on the right of the basket, and the two feeders on the passing line on the left side of the basket. When the feeder passes the ball, the shooter should move into the pass where they see fit, then attempt to shoot either by moving their position again or staying where they are. Then the rebounder's job to try and get the defensive rebound or even try to block the shot in the first place. So therefore, as the drill has a defensive part, my player can swap between roles of shooter and rebounder to aim to improve his levels of defensive rebound in play, as well as his shooting. When coaching this drill, the coach can also change up what type of shot they have to perform, so either a layup, 2-point or 3-point to keep variety. The drill should probably be done for 5 to 10 minutes every other session, so the coach can see any improvements regularly. And then in order to assess his progress overall, each time a match is played, notational analysis could be used again to see how many more baskets he gets and how many more defensive rebounds, and this should hopefully show improvements. Something else I would note with this player from looking at the rest of their data as well is that maybe they aren't very confident, and that's why they don't get up near to the net, as they don't want to risk missing it and feel embarrassed, so their coach may want to focus on giving them extra praise or even one-to-one support to increase their confidence. The next strategy links to 6.2, and it's basically he needs to practice of explosive speed, and this is needed in order to improve his box out and rebound. Because when he went to receive the ball, he didn't sprint out fast enough to be able to receive the ball while still in the air. Instead, he had to get low, which slowed him down more, and waited for the ball to fall into his arms. So therefore, he needs to incorporate some drills that improve speed into his training, so he's able to receive more defensive rebounds. I'm going to recommend that he does hill sprints to improve this, mainly because They work you harder than just simple sprints on the flat, but he also doesn't have to do this as part of a structured training session. He can do it in his own time outside of training. He should aim to do them 2 to 3 times a week and gradually increase the distance and number of them. I would say he should start with them at about 100 meters and do 6 to 8 reps and increase this steadily as and when he feels he can. Then to assess his progress in this every week in one session, they should complete the box out and rebound drill and use their chosen technical model to compare him to then be able to see any further improvements needed or where things have improved. The final strategy therefore links to 6.3, and his main problem for his vertical jump was his lack of power, as this would affect all the other elements of his vertical jump. So therefore, what needs the improvement in his levels of power, and to improve this, he needs to do some plyometric training. To start off with, I'm going to recommend he incorporates squat jumps into his training, especially as this directly improves his vertical power. He should aim to do squat jumps 3 to 5 times a week at 5 sets with 8 reps. If this is too much, he can decrease it and re-increase it, and the same goes for as it gets easier. So they should gradually increase. But I would say to keep the sets the same and the amount of times per week the same. Not only will this drill help his vertical jump alone, but in turn it will help him improve the last recommendation, as if he has more power, that will allow him to sprint off even faster and in turn then be able to jump up even quicker to receive the ball whilst it's still in the air. After a month of this, they should try to find time to go to biomechanics lab, only if possible, and retest his vertical jump. If they cannot go to a biomechanics lab, then they could use a jump mat instead. As long as they are receiving data which is showing improvements, then that's what's essential to measure progress. They should retest every other month after this or sooner if they see a lack of improvement or issues in training.